have a classic OT bit of phraseology, janky. I'm having to buy.
Well, what would you suggest?
Books. I'm not suggesting anything else. I think having now edited literally probably hundreds of hours of us chatting shit, there are certain phrases that we use
all the time.
Yeah. Chance would be a fine thing. A very fine thing indeed.
Indeed.
Good morning and welcome to the Hobbit Breakfast Show, kicking off your morning with Wargaming Chat. Your hosts, as always, are myself, Arnold. I'm also joined by the Mayor.
Hello.
And OT.
Hi.
And today we are going to be discussing a brief history. I say brief. Citation needed.
Of all of this.
Middle strategy battle game. A brief overview of where the game started, and I guess it will probably devolve into us just chatting shit about playing it over the last 13 years. Is that what we've been playing it for? Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah. Don't think about that.
Existential dread involved in the we will be back with Hobby. Oh, so much Hobby. Someone start us off.
Why don't you start us off?
Wow, the reverse. No, wasn't expecting that. Fucking hell. Right, good. Yes, I have painted things this month. I have done a little bit of work on my 15mm late Romans. Yes, so I painted up 6 little horse archers. And I also painted up my leader, Flavius Aetius. I decided to go for the Romans as they were when they fought the Huns because I lack originality.
Because you're a nerd.
Yeah, what a dweeb. And also some dudes to be his bodyguard, although I then realised that I'd accidentally only painted 5 and in what's the game called? Oh, my brain died.
40k?
Yeah, that's the one. In 40k, Roman horses come in units of 6.
Is it Hail Caesar?
No, it's the one that you two
wore something,
by, but you didn't.
Line Rampant.
Line Rampant. Thank you. So yeah,
I will eventually.
I know eventually in like 5 years. So yeah, in Line Rampant they come in units of 6, and I'd accidentally painted 5. I don't know how I did that, but never mind because I need to paint more anyway. So that's fine. Yep, they're fine. They're small. They paint up fine. I also painted a cloth goblin for no reason, and there he is. Isn't he pink?
Yes.
I realised after painting it that by painting them pink, they look even more like the clangers.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess, subconsciously what I was trying to do. And then finally this month, I've been painting up some... it's not called Skyrim. It's called the Elder Scrolls Call to Arms miniatures. And I bought the plastic. It's not really a starter set, but it kind of is. It comes with the Draugr, the undead Norse. So you can see through them there. They're great swords. It also comes with a Draugr Overlords.
I think they're just called Drow.
I think they're called Draugr.
I like the way you're saying it. Let's call them Draugrs.
They're not called Drow, are they? Drow pronunciation. Draugr pronunciation. Here we go. It is Draugr. Suck it.
I don't trust Google. That's not.
Well, when I typed in how
citation needed.
When I typed in how to pronounce Draugr, it it said that I was right.
Okay.
On the first thing that I clicked, so that's definitely right. Yeah, and finally, also I painted up the Dragonborn, the player character, the Dovahkiin. She's pretty cool. She's got her like standard, gear that she has in the adverts. The little horned helmet and stuff. So yeah, that was my month.
Well done.
Thank you.
That's all right.
I also have 3 skeleton archers that came in that set, by the way. I just haven't painted them yet.
Okay. We didn't ask.
I know, but I just wanted to.
Okay, it's a yeah. I think
Just
we
wanted
should
to
move on.
clarify for the
Yeah,
viewer.
well, nobody asked you to.
Well, they might have wanted to.
Well, nobody did they?
They also probably are interested in my plans for these models.
Okay. I mean,
We should have said before that you can skip all of this if you want to.
Yeah, there will be timestamps.
but if they're listening to this, they haven't clicked on them.
Maybe they're only just realizing it was a thing.
There'll be, the analytics will show a severe drop off rate at this point. OT, you can go next.
Thank you. So I painted some late Roman horse archers from the.
God, they look very similar to mine.
I know, it's eerie, isn't it?
Is this usable? It remains to be seen.
I'll leave it up to the winds of the editor. I've done lots of random crap this month. So to start off with, I finished off some Iron Hill stuff, which you can see here. I'm not particularly happy with them, if I'm being brutally honest. I think they look okay. Yeah, it's fine. I don't think the premium for for the Forge World stuff is worth it in this case for me. I think with like Glorfindel and stuff like that, it was definitely noticeable, whereas these just I feel were fairly similar to like the Grimhounds and stuff from Thralls, but yeah, they're cool, and like they come in the more valuable box now, I guess, so they're not as bad as they were. And to be fair, if GW's main prices keep going up, these actually don't look so bad. Next ones were my slightly random side project, the Noldoran Exiles. So I bought a bunch of 3D prints off Etsy, which I was feeling pretty smart about until I worked out that they were more expensive than the plastic wood elves from GW. Although I am a big fan of the sculpts, I think they look quite cool. And then I proxied Gildor at the front there with his sword out. I'm really happy with these ones. Like, I think the color scheme just is hopefully what they'd look like, and I think it was quite straightforward to paint. So those are really nice. Then I'll talk about the Hobbits next. So I've painted 2 lots of Hobbits. I bought another pack off Etsy, which was called like 4 Wandering Hobbits or something. I think they're basically meant to be used as like Bilbo and Frodo, stuff like that. And then Onod very kindly gave me his spare Merry and Pippin from his Fellowship set, so I painted those up as well, which I think means I now have a completed Fellowship for the first time, because I've always had bits and pieces, but I think I've now got the whole gang ready to go. Then I had to blast through some Legion stuff because I've got a tournament coming up quite soon, video possibly coming out at some point in the next couple of weeks, where I had to paint up some Rebel troopers along with some Rebel specialists. I just did these with exactly the same colour scheme as my previous ones. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice it's exactly the same as my Wood Elf warriors because I just like painting them models like that. I'm really happy with how these turned out, especially the aliens, which I think are really cool, and actually painting non-humanoid Legion models feels quite cool. And then finally, I was able to pick up on eBay some basically the Republic half of a starter set for, I think it was like 22 quid or something, which was a couple of units of clones and Obi-Wan, and I painted those up. I'm really happy with how Obi-Wan turned out. Like, I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go, but I think actually I've got a bit better at painting armor, and I think his face looks pretty good. So yeah, that's me done for the month.
I think Obi-Wan looks good, yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. I tried to go for a bit of a glowing effect of his lightsaber, and I don't think it quite worked as well as I want. I think I had to go for a slightly brighter blue, but I think it still turned out all right.
I think what you'll find is you paint more that you've actually got to kind of go all the way to white to really,
Yeah,
really get it going.
yeah.
But yeah, it's quite difficult to make.
Because also I used a layer. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the Citadel sort of blue layer paint rather than a base
Yeah,
paint, and I think it didn't quite. And I dry brushed it. I maybe should just have put it on with a normal brush, but
you could try
yeah,
doing some like object source lighting, which is like a
yeah.
nice
So
way.
I
Kind of,
saw some basically I copied this color scheme off one I saw online, and they'd done some like a blue glow reflected on his face, which looked really really cool. But I think obviously really hard to get right. So
it's
yeah,
actually easier than you think because obviously I did it for Sting with Sam.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I get though why you maybe don't want to commit to it because if
Yeah.
you get it wrong, you then have to repaint his face.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. And Mare.
Well, I painted 89 Hobbit miniatures and Treebeard. That is all.
Here's the picture.
On screen. I thought you painted like a woman.
Yeah, your Amazon.
She's not based, so I'm not counting that. And I'm
Right.
also going to repaint her, I think.
Mm.
I painted an Amazonian Blood Bowl thing, but it looks very flat, so I'm gonna have another go, I think.
I didn't. She didn't look bad. I think I got what you meant about not having that like color gradient from the sort of the black up to the white on the dry brush, and how it didn't quite come through in the shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think after painting all the Hobbits, I just feel like the Hobbits came out exactly how I wanted them to, and the slapshot method was brilliant for that.
Yeah. And
looking at my Burrows and Badgers miniatures, they also look a bit flat compared to them. I've painted most of a few mice miniatures for Burrows and Badgers today actually, but again, not based yet, so not counting those. But I started because they're just a very flat wraithbone color, and I tried putting contrast over it, but it just doesn't work as well as when you properly do slap chop. So, but I'm committed to that now because all of the other Burrows and Badgers miniatures look like that. So
yeah,
what you could do is you could have you already primed them in Wraithbone?
Yeah.
What you could do is you could null wash it.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Get black in the recesses and then contrast after that.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. Presumably, you'd have to use quite a heavy wash, or
I don't know, because you might find with like a light wash that gives you a similar effect to a heavy dry brush then with only a little bit of black left.
It might dry a bit weirdly. I actually don't know how it would work. It'd be quite interesting to see.
If you use the new Known Wash formula, that one doesn't actually dry on the flat surfaces very much. Like you have to apply it quite heavily for it to look like the old Known Wash.
Because it's a bit thinner, isn't it? Because I've got an old pot of the Known and a new one, and there is definitely a difference between the two of them.
It's a shame they don't make both, really, because they both have good uses. The old one's really good for making stuff look dirty, and the new one's good for kind of actually just sticking in the recesses. So, to
be fair, I guess like black contrasts. I mean, obviously they're not the same, but maybe they achieve a similar effect to the old one.
They're too thick; they just would. Make
it's true.
Yeah, I think the key is that the null will just pull, hopefully in the deepest crevices. But I don't know. I think it might make the skin look a bit weird, but I think I'm just going to reprime them. But anyway, the main achievement was painting my entire Shire army in like a month and a half. Like,
there we go.
I don't think if I'd said that I was going to do that 6 months ago, I don't think that was going to happen. But the constant telling me that at the rate I was painting, I would literally never paint. I'd probably die before I finished my pile of shame.
I mean, that was true.
It was true at the rate I was going, which was
because
probably...
also your pile of shame is just. I mean, it's not as bonkers anymore,
big.
but like, I mean, when you did your inventory, it was like, good lord, this is.
I mean, I think of the, I've still got all my Soviets, all my undead stuff.
Yeah.
3 kill teams, the blood team, blood bowl team, and a load of other random shit. So there's still a while to go. But once I find like a good method of painting something, it's very satisfying. So I'm just gonna try and keep at it. So I think next is going to be the Blood Bowl team, And actually, I'm going to let you guys decide actually what my next project is. It'll either be finishing the Rohirrim, or I think doing the undead, because I really kind of fancy some skeletons, or kill team stuff. What do you think? What would you like to see?
Oh, I
painted?
thought you were talking to the audience.
Yeah, I thought
I'm
you were
talking to
too.
you two bozos.
Oh,
okay.
Our audience aren't listening to this bit, so
Okay.
Suck
yeah,
it, audience.
Yeah. I think you should finish the Rohirrim and do your kill team.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think finish the Rohirrim because you're going to use them more than you will
The Soviets.
skeletons or Soviets.
that is true. Okay, once I've done this Blood Bowl team, I will do the Rohirrim, and then I'll move on to a kill team.
Huge.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Right. Let's talk about. Oh, do you want like a logical divide, or are we just going to go straight into it?
Yes.
Okay. Pause. Right. Let's talk about the history of MESBG. I don't really know how this is going to work. I'm quite interested to see how we go. In terms of the visuals, what do you think you'll go for here, Onod? What are you feeling?
I haven't decided yet.
Okay, cool, good. That's an excellent response. Thank you for that.
I'll know when I'm doing it.
Okay. So essentially, this is just going to be a very brief, not particularly accurate history of MESBG, starting from where it began in 2001 up until the present day. When did we all start playing SBG?
What, the year or
The year, or
Oh,
the
God.
age, or the month, or the season?
The
what
precise
year was it when we were in year 8?
1985.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Surely you were playing it before then because you had already got stuff when I started.
Yeah,
I think I
and
might
knew the
remember it.
rules.
Oh, sorry, cut that. I've just said where we went to school, but I think it. Well, is that first school?
The same primary school.
Sorry.
A normal human.
Right, cut. Okay. At primary school is when I started playing.
So
I think.
which primary school did you go to?
What's its postcode?
My brother and I played a bit of it, and then sort of
Where was
got
that?
bored of it.
Where was the address?
We used to play it incorrectly, as I remember, and we got taught by some other people at school, who I blame for my misteachings. And then I believe you two started playing at some point, and I taught the rules wrong to you as well. And we'll get on to what happened with that a bit later. But yeah.
Okay. What do we remember about the rules from this time? Like when we were playing them,
We played them wrong.
We played them wrong, but like, is there?
Our start to it, or we just was that?
I mean, we can talk about your start. I figured you'd try and make a joke out of it. We can talk about it if you want to. When did you?
Started in 2009.
Right.
And unlike my memory is functional, and I started specifically at Christmas time, where I got the Battle of Five Armies, which was the 10mm game based on War Master.
Yeah.
And I also got a box of Dwarf Rangers, but I'd say that a classic. I properly got in the following year, 2010. I remember my first White Dwarf was the when the 8th edition of Warhammer was coming out.
Wow.
And I was pretty hyped for that, and I thought that we'd all get into Warhammer Fantasy, and then
we didn't.
All the pricks at school went and bought 40k, and I had to do that instead.
Yeah.
I say I didn't have to, but
well, you did, didn't you? The social pressure was overwhelming.
The peer pressure from the nerds.
Curse those nerds. It for me, it was definitely. It must have been earliest 2011, I reckon, that I got into it. Maybe 2010.
You're probably hanging around in 2020.
Yeah, but I wasn't willing to commit because I had slightly less effect on me owing to the social pressure from the nerds than Onod did.
Commitment issues.
Commitment. It's I mean, this is really an existential crisis going on right here, isn't it? Let's say for the sake of argument, late 2010. I had to borrow models. I refused to buy them for the longest time, and then I bought some really cheap secondhand ones off eBay, and that was what I used. I had a mixture of like some dwarves, some Rohan, and some elves, and that was pretty much what I used in quite a haphazard way for the first couple of years. Crazy times. So, as my original question was, what are our memories of what the rules were like at this point? How did the game play? Was there any things that really stuck out, or was it just like kind of felt similar to how the game feels now?
I mean, it doesn't. Not at all like how the game plays now.
No,
but I don't know if that's because we were playing it wrong.
Do you want to explain to the viewers how I taught you to play?
The way that Mare taught us to play,
and that I was taught to play,
and I exclusively play Mare for this.
Yeah.
Admittedly, you could have looked this up at any point.
Knew he would say that. I win the Mare bingo this day. Basically, the way it had been interpreted, which I think, to be fair, for people who had never played a war game before and weren't used to quite complex rule sets, coming from playing stuff like Risk, which I think was probably the most extreme level of gaming we'd done before that. We had misinterpreted, due to various individuals not properly informing us, that when you rolled your dice in the fight phase, rather than in the case of a draw, the highest fight winning, we were informed that you added the fight value to the dice roll, which made certain characters, like for example,
I don't think it was even in the event of a draw. It was
it was just for dual rolls. For dual rolls,
so for dual rolls. Yeah, you just add your fight to the dice.
Glorfindel was very good.
Gil-galad was insanely OP.
Gil-galad was basically invincible. Obviously, there wasn't the glut of high fights that there now is. So it was basically elves won.
Yeah.
Uruk-hai and dwarfs did okay.
Yeah.
And then everyone else was just like hot garbage, and everyone was like, why the fuck would you play these guys?
And so to put this in perspective, in case you haven't quite understood the ramifications of this, it meant that if Gil-galad went into a fight, anybody fight 3 or lower, he automatically won.
Now the main rule mistake, which
amplified the problems,
actually was entirely Mare's fault this time. Just to be clear, I want this on the record.
Because I was taught this way.
Okay,
so.
I was there when Mare found out that this wasn't how it was played.
Yeah, and that was funny. We can tell a story about that as well.
Okay. So this isn't just story time, by the way. Like, yes, we do actually have some content.
I'm going to tell that story though.
The other mistake we made. Interestingly, the two mistakes combined, unfortunately.
Yes, just made it horrific.
We didn't realise how you were meant to separate out combats. So we used to chain them all together. So if a shield wall, like what Mare used to do, and I'm being a little bit unfair to Mare, but it's because he was playing Uruk-hai and I would usually be playing someone like Rohan. So Mare, playing the rules how he thought, was like, well, if I just chain like a big shield wall together and they're all part of the same combat and they don't split, I'm definitely going to roll a 6 with like 12 dice. So yeah. That really fucked with how you meant to play the game, didn't it?
Yeah.
So basically, we found out that we were playing it wrong because we took part in School League, which was a tournament thing that GW set up. Where
I assume it still exists, right?
Yeah,
I assume so. Well, I'm also assuming not all of our audience, our children, all have played School League, so I'm going to explain it anyway. Basically, you go to a regional at your local GW. As a team of 4, you play other people. If you win, which we did because we're amazing and because we didn't have any opponents, that's how many people played Lotra. We then went to Warhammer Worlds for the big tournament. So all the regional champions went to Nottingham, and we all went off for our first game. I had the pleasure of playing someone who hadn't played before and who was filling in for someone. So naturally, I taught them how to play. Only to find out
they were very grateful for.
They were very grateful, and obviously I beat them. And then
funny
that, and then we all gathered round, and someone, I forget who, it might have been you, Honoured, informed me that actually we'd been playing the rules wrong. To my dismay, and we proceeded to get battered because we had been playing in this weird little meta that wasn't how you played the game. So the rest of the tournament was pretty horrific. So yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I think the other thing that we should stress that also led to us playing slightly skewed games was that because a lot of the time our games we used to do in like a 45-minute lunch break.
Yeah.
We didn't have any like scenery at school, so we used to play on like a flat table, which probably also favoured certain armies over others.
Yep.
Yeah. But there we go.
Good fun. Should we try and talk about the actual game, or are we just going to reminisce about our memories of it? Or
we can talk about the actual game. So we weren't around for the very beginning when the world came out of the black hole. That's not what happened, is it?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know. When God made the world in 7 days.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I wondered whether you were going to leave that one in.
He made Middle-earth strategy battle game on the 6th day. As we all know. 7th day, he had a rest to play it.
Yeah.
And 2001, Fellowship of the Ring, the rulebook was released, and then it was expanded upon with the other 2 films in consecutive years. And then all of that was consolidated together into the tome that I currently hold in my hand.
A weighty tome.
I mean, it was never actually officially called anything other than Lord of the Rings Strategy Battle Game. I think everyone calls it the One Ring rule.
Yeah.
Or the One Rule Book to rule.
Yeah. Not sure why that is.
Yeah. Who knows? I'm going to go ahead and say this is probably my favourite ever.
Wow. A bold statement.
I really like this rule book.
Why do you like it?
There's a few things I like about it. First of all, when it was produced, you didn't need anything other than this to play. I know they quickly released supplements, but it was like the rules were contained, and because like the Middle-earth rules aren't too complicated, like they're obviously there's a lot more to them now than they used to be, and we'll get on to why that's the case.
Yeah.
But you had all of the rules, you had the scenarios, you had the profiles, all in one book. And then at the back, you also had like modeling stuff, which I remember spending a lot of time looking at, and like painting guides, pretty cool, like how to do conversions. It's really fun. And something I think that should be brought back. The final page had like a quick reference to all of the charts and the wound chart and how much things moved. Why did this stop becoming a thing? I mean, I know that nerds like OT just memorize the wound chart and never have to look at it. But for people like me who have better things to remember, why would you put this on some random page like 42 or something? But yeah, I really liked the one rule book to rule them all, and I can't imagine that's a very controversial opinion.
No, I think it
simpler times.
Yeah, and like we'll come on to this later, but like obviously the game has got more nuanced, and there's upsides and downsides to that. But like I have fond memories of opening up this book for sure, and I think that's quite a nice thing. The only rule that really stuck out for me was volley fire, which I'm 90% convinced was around in this time and then got removed.
It was. I liked volley fire. Volley fire was fun.
Yeah. So this is, again, me delving into the depths of my memory. I think it doubled the range in which you fired, but you only hit on 6s or something. I can't quite remember how it worked, and I think you had to group up into a certain number before you did it, but maybe that's inaccurate.
Yes, you needed, I think, let me just, I can find it in the rulebook.
Was it 10? Did you need 10?
I think it was 10. I'm struggling to find it in the rulebook.
Oh god, is it another rule we made up?
Advanced rules.
We were advanced players, to be fair.
Page 45. So, group of 10 or more bow-armed models in base contact with each other, forming an uninterrupted chain of models. The range of bows firing in volleys doubled, but models that are close than 18 inches cannot be targeted. You pick an enemy model within range, they only hit 6. And then the player controlling target can pick any model within 6 inches of the target and allocate the hit. So it had a kind of scatter feature, a little bit like Siege Engine, but there wasn't any risk of just missing if you rolled a 6.
Mm-hmm.
It had the benefit, I suppose, that if no one was in 6,
yeah,
the one that you so you had to keep stuff grouped together. What it did allow, I guess, was threat projection. I guess the danger was that it incentivized in certain scenarios you just sitting in the corner and peppering each other with very low accuracy firepower.
Yeah, which possibly wouldn't make the most interactive game experience.
Possibly not. It's a bit like Assault on Helm's Deep, isn't it?
Wee, shots fired.
Anyway, yes.
Too soon.
I quite like the idea of the volley fire, but I'm kind of glad it's gone now, to be honest. I feel like too many people would abuse it.
Yes, I think that's
I don't really know, because obviously back in this iteration of the game there was no band thing.
Yeah, you just had heroes and
heroes, warriors. You just needed a hero to be your leader.
Yeah,
I guess that in today's game, not necessarily that many armies would be able to do this very well.
No, I think I'm glad that they have made it warband structure now, because I think playing in that era, like, it does make me think, you know, would it have been what would have happened if you just took one hero and then only warriors? Like, we know how good armies are at the moment that just have like enough troops. There'd be a wider variety of armies, I suppose. In terms of the structure of the army, you could get away with a lot less heroes in theory, and that might have made for an interesting battle.
All hero armies would have been screwed in a system, because there's just no way they can chop through the chaff, basically.
But the only chaff armies are basically goblins. I mean, you could make any army chaff, I suppose, because you just take whatever the cheapest warrior is. But
I'm guessing though that in this era, this is probably where the concept of the shield wall was born, wasn't it? Where everyone probably just made like one big uninterrupted line and walked towards each other, because there wasn't warband deployment, and
that did feel like what most of the games were.
Yeah. You didn't, but I guess it incentivized having more banners and stuff, because you needed more of that kind of thing. I guess it was just a different game. But I think also it was probably a lot more scenario driven than perhaps it was now, and perhaps as a result of people playing it more pointy, that they brought in the changes to stop it being like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway,
should we talk about Watcher?
Well, we haven't discussed early SBG prior to us playing it. Then very, very quickly, there was like a huge magazine series, Battle Games Middle Earth, which I think is basically anyone who's probably in their mid 30s to 40s. That's probably how they got into the game, if they got into it straight away, because I think you basically got models very, very cheaply with a magazine. I mean, it was apparently so popular that entire YouTube based off just reading them, and building the stuff that was in the magazines, and people are clearly still so into them that that's viable content in 2023. Fair play. And there was also a load of supplement books. Now, I did own some of these, but I gave them away to a charity shop.
Yep. He's just that kind of guy. He's yeah. It's just what he does.
I had the Khazad-dûm supplement book.
You did.
I had the Harrod supplement book as well.
Bit random, that one.
I think those are the only. Well, I was at one point going to get a Harrod, but it materialized into one box of Harrod Warriors, and then I decided against it. The one thing I remember about these source books was they had like loads of different armies, but you didn't get like an army bonus.
No.
So it was like there was like a version of the dwarf army list in the Khazad-dûm book which didn't give you any named dwarves, and it was like, but why? Like, I don't like what was the thinking behind. I mean,
was there any?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was just at the time the rules author, that was the only way they could think of making sure that you didn't bring like Dane with Durin or something, put them in different army lists rather than just writing now like we have now. You can't take this with any others, just an impossible alliance sort of thing. I guess that maybe that was just how they did it. But it was
solution.
Yeah, well, it was a bit weird.
Yeah,
a more elegant weapon.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So, you know the source books that are like the Fallen Realms and all that shit.
Yeah,
that's different to Gondor in Flames, A Shadow in the East.
Yes,
Mordor, Harad, Khazad-dûm, isn't it?
Yeah, there's different eras, pre and post Watcher.
Yeah.
Okay. So which one am I? Because I've got both in my hands right now.
So
I can't remember which one came first.
The Fallen Realms, Morian Angmar, Free Peoples, Kings of Men. That's all post Watcher.
Yeah.
Right.
The rest of it is your Siege of Gondor, all that stuff. Gondor in Flames is all before Watcher.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, just the simplicity of it's just so beautiful. Now you even got like some painting guides in them. I'm looking at the Mordor one now.
I do wonder why they stopped doing painting guides. Is it just because they weren't making money off them?
I think it's YouTube.
It's just a lot of effort.
Yeah, there's just better options, I suppose.
I think that it's just you're gonna take, a video where you can see exactly, because like I can kind of remember reading stuff where it said like dry brush something, and when you were like
the concept of dry brushing.
But what does that mean? Like
what is dry brush?
What is dry brush? So
yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, some interesting stuff in them though. Like I like, especially when they didn't have standard terrain. So they obviously didn't have terrain kits, and in a lot of the scenarios and stuff, it just shows a board that is clearly just like completely custom, like beautifully made. And I just love looking at those, especially there's a book called How to Make War Games Terrain, which is slight tangent.
Yeah, the classic.
But I fucking love that. I just loved looking at that book. Like, I don't know, it's just beautiful.
I know what you mean. Like, I don't know whether it's just because I'm old and attention span, but I remember that I used to spend like so much more time going through these old books because, as you say, like, because it wasn't just showing me a photo of like the house that they sell, it was like how to build stuff. I spent way more time like actually looking at the boards, looking at the armies. And when we go on to the War of the Ring book, like this is something they do in that really well, but like just like showing you, I don't know, like I think this is something that we've talked about before, and I go back because I'm like a broken record and I have no
you're old, so you forget you've talked about these things.
But yeah, I've mentioned it many before, but it's like that kind of aspirational, like living vicariously.
Yeah,
it's like you see these like amazing boards, and I think that looking through a book like that is much more inspirational than looking through a book that's like filled with like nice art and stuff. For me, I know that some people like the newer GW books, which are a lot cleaner and a lot more like, art focused, and the rules are laid out in a much more clear way, I guess, visually. But I do kind of like the old ones where they just dedicated a whole page to like showing you a 6x4 table with people playing on it.
I've just found in the Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers book, near the back, there's literally a double page spread, and the title is The Miniatures, and it literally shows you how to wash them, how to clip them off, how to glue them onto the base, like what tools to use. And then the page after that is literally the entire paint range with like little swatch colors and stuff. The one after that is about undercoating, making a start, mixing colors, palettes. There's actually so there's a page called Hints and Techniques, and there's one about painting faces, and it literally has like a gradient picture of Aragorn's face with where to put the initial layer of color and then where to build up highlights.
That's crazy.
Like
that actually is very useful. Like,
yeah,
I'm surprised
you'd never see this now though.
There's a lot of the time. This is, I think, maybe the one thing that criticize about YouTube painting channels. Like, they just apply the paint and it's done so quickly that sometimes it's difficult to exactly see what they're doing. While something like that is good. But yeah, like the one rule book at the back has instructions about how to build paper boats so that you can do like the scenarios with like the orcs landing and stuff like that. And they've got like instructions about how to build a fortress out of like styrofoam so that you can do like a siege, and it gives you like a siege scenario.
There's a thing on here telling you how to convert an Uruk-hai warrior to hold two swords. Don't know why he needs two swords, but
looks cool.
Why not?
And there's also one where they're literally like converting a goblin spearman to have a brass rod spear instead of the GW one. Don't know why.
Yeah, and there's stuff like converting Shagrat into just a regular Mordor.
Why would you do that?
I think just because they didn't have a model for a Mordor Uruk-hai captain, so it was just, here's how you make Shagrat look generic.
I've just found a double spray spread literally called Building Helm's Deep, and it's literally just a giant foam model, and they just show you how they made it. Like,
yeah,
it's just so cool.
Bring it back, Games Workshop. Anyway, let's move on because we now.
Do you want to know how long we talked about that?
A lot of time.
I've been timing us. It is 23 minutes we've been going.
I think the audience would appreciate that waffle.
Okay. Well, okay.
War of the Ring.
Oh,
what happened?
2009
GW
Games
fucked
Workshop.
up.
Well, I don't know.
Well, they did. Otherwise, we'd be playing it.
True. Games Workshop decided that they would. Presumably, the thought process was, we've had a load of customers for about 8 years buying a lot of shit. Let's give them a way to play it all in like a big battle without having to use a skirmish game set of rules. And so they came up with War of the Ring. And I think actually there were a lot of good ideas in War of the Ring. For example, I think the bases were a smart idea. Like, rather than having to have square bases like Warhammer Fantasy was using, you just popped your skirmish bases into the square ones. Yep. I think the mistake was how much they focused on War of the Ring over SBG.
What do you mean by that?
I distinctly remember at the time War of the Ring was big, they stopped doing SBG demos in the local GW. It was only War of the Ring.
It's true.
War of the Ring was the tournament option. They didn't do SBG games anymore either. Like, you could still go in and play SBG, but it wasn't a thing. They weren't like selling the SBG rulebook as such. It was like War of the Ring. You could order it online, but again, War of the Ring was the focus. and they started releasing SBG rules in like a White Dwarf. War of the Ring got like the proper rule book.
Yep.
SBG was like a White Dwarf. Like, here you go. 2 months later, I'll go on. Then we'll make you some rules. So like stuff like the King's Champion, for example, which was released for War of the Ring.
Yeah.
It then got SBG rules in a White Dwarf initially, and I think the neglect for what was a very popular game was a mistake. I think War of the Ring would have worked better had they acknowledged that.
I mean, they even. Sorry, go on.
You needed SBG to get people into the game, because War of the Ring is a horrible game to start with, because you need so many miniatures for a game which was originally designed to be a skirmish game.
Yeah.
So you're buying like, packs of 6 horses, and that might make up like 5% of your army. Which I guess maybe that's just an issue with army games. Yeah,
I feel like
say.
they really went for it, and I feel like they were hoping that it would do better than SBG, and that they would just be able to continue doing War of the Ring and not doing anything else. Because they repackaged like all of the boxes to basically have 8 of everything, didn't they? It used to be that you get however many in a box. I think it was, for example, it might still be, but the Urukai Warriors, you get 10 pikes and 10 swordsmen.
I think that for the Urukai, I think that the standard thing was that you got 24 in a box, and then for some you didn't. I'm not sure they ever repackaged the Urukai to have.
Okay, I could be wrong about that.
What they did do is when War of the Rings stopped, they repackaged stuff so there was only 12 in a box, because that was the warband size.
Yeah.
So I think you're remembering it backwards, maybe.
Potentially. Yeah, I feel like they were just thinking, let's just go for this and hope that pays off. And obviously, I don't know, sales weren't doing as well or whatever it was, and they were just like, this isn't working. We need to make a skirmish game again, because people aren't. Maybe they weren't seeing new customers; they were just seeing all the people who played SBG like us do it.
Yeah.
And of course, we did a round of school league with this and got absolutely ruffle stomped.
It was bad.
That time, not because we were playing the rules wrong, but because basically none of us had enough money to buy the big units, basically.
Yeah.
Well, we sort of made our own little meta bubble again, didn't we? And
that was based off of the fact that I was like, I can afford to buy 1 box of Dwarf Warriors. I'm not going to go out and buy a second box because I want to go out and buy something different. So that limited me to only ever having a maximum of 2 stands in a dwarf unit.
Yeah. And saving grace, of course, was that they basically just made Lurtz incredibly powerful if overcosted. That was my favourite bit about it.
My favourite bit about it was Aragorn's ability to random teleport.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah, that was really.
He had to use so much might to do it, but it was really cool.
Bring that back. The trouble is, because the game had like rank and actually it was worth spending all of his might to just suddenly teleport directly behind the enemy unit.
And also, if he burned all his might, I think he could do it with like 6 companies or something, which was like a huge unit, and they could just teleport all the way across the battlefield and absolutely wreck you.
Yeah. There were good things about the game.
There were.
I mean, it's thanks to this game that we have, the concept of like more heroics.
Yep.
That was introduced here and then brought into SBG.
Yeah. Do you think Watra deserved more time, or do you think it used enough time?
From a economic company-based time, it deserved as much time as it got, because clearly it wasn't viable.
Yeah.
I think the real thing that killed Watcher, I think there's 2 things. One, trying to push a game where you need that many miniatures for a film franchise that, whilst very, very popular, was at that point now 6 years old. I think if they'd gone Watcher initially, probably would have worked.
Yeah.
I think that it was too late. I think they thought everyone would be really hyped to do these big battles, and I think the reality was that actually most GW customers, if they wanted to do big battles, would probably just play Warhammer Fantasy. I think that they like Lord of the Rings because they like the characters and they like the moments of the film, and SBG is just a better system to do that for all but like the two biggest battles that they'd fight.
The interesting part for me was always that, maybe it was just for us, but like, because we had, well, I didn't have much of an SPG collection at this point, but people had SPG collections. You tended to use the same number of models in SPG as you did in WOTRA. So it actually ended up playing a bit like a skirmish game in WOTRA, even though it wasn't, but you just had these weird, like slightly awkward formations that didn't really fit a skirmish style game.
But again, I think that's just because none of us really were investing in building the units out to play it how it was meant to be played, I guess.
Yeah.
I've never liked the rank and file thing, to be honest. I feel like to make it work, you'd have to have. It's just so awkward. It's just like, I don't mind the whole maneuvering and planning far in advance thing. Like, I think that's fine, and I think in some ways you have to do that in SPG. Like, where you deploy is really important because of the time it takes to fix that if you fucked it up. I like the idea of rank and file, but I don't think it works in practice, and I don't enjoy playing with them, to be honest.
I think it does work. I think that the way that Games Workshop approached it with their biggest games is always a bit of a mistake. I think you need to be more abstract. I think the idea of removing each is not a good idea in rank flank games. I think that you need to do something more abstract, and it needs to be more of a kind of, this is the concept of a unit rather than I'm going to remove each model individually.
Maybe like an entire company gets removed rather than an individual unit from that company.
That's what modern games that do this, like Kings of War, do. It's more the unit gets affected by how much damage it's taken, but until it finally is destroyed and you remove the whole thing, it remains on the board. And I think that having the concept of individual models, picking them off and your unit being exactly reflective of the amount of miniatures that are in the unit, and you having to go like, right, these ones on the back, they can't fight, but the ones in front can fight, but you only get this many dice because they're not on the front row, and then the ones on the very front row. I think that just adds too much granularity to a game that's not meant to be granular. Like, you're trying to play stuff that's like SPG into a game that's not.
It's fair.
What I will say is that the Battle of Five Armies, based on Warmaster, that is a rank and flank game that I think does it much better. I will go in to defend that is a good system.
I'm sure it probably does. I think you've got much smaller things moving around on a much, like, potentially proportionately larger area. So it might. I mean, it would be like
there's actually purpose to it because the table's big enough. Whilst when in WOTRA you just end up with two battles most of the time because there isn't enough room.
So imagine this. I feel like this might be a cool idea, actually. Imagine playing SPG, just pure SPG, but all your minis are on square bases, and you've got like 10 minis per base. And suddenly you're playing like an epic scale version of Lord of the Rings that works probably just as well as SPG does, just looks like it's at a bigger scale. And maybe there's something you can do where if a unit's next to another, it gets a bonus of some sort, or but not make it so like completely different. I feel like, well, I mean, then they can't sell like another book with another rule set. But I kind of like the idea of doing something like that.
I think you're basically describing Kings of War.
Fair.
Not made by Games Workshop, but literally, if you just bought Middle-earth models and just stuck them all onto a square base, like, you could just play Kings of War with them.
Don't tempt me.
But anyway,
Final question I've got for Watra.
um,
Battle hosts. Were these a good idea, and what did we think of them at the time?
Just an early version of Legions, I think.
Yes, that's exactly what I've written here.
I think that a lot of ideas from Lord of the Ring were ported into SBG successfully.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it almost ends up feel not like a testing ground. Obviously, I'm not saying that's what they were trying to do, but like it does feel like that's kind of what ended up happening to a degree.
I think. Sorry, go on.
They just had some like ideas they weren't super sure about, and they just I mean, maybe that's all it ever ended up being, was just a bit of a testing ground for new ideas.
I mean, I think as a creative space, War of the Ring was a good rule set.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that it was pitched to the wrong audience.
Yeah.
Like, I think if they, for example, I think War of the Ring is a much more elegant rule set than Warhammer Fantasy. And I think that if they had used this for Warhammer Fantasy, that would have been potentially quite a successful move. I don't like. Obviously, I guess the Warhammer Fantasy players might really like their incredibly painful rule set to play, and presumably they do because they're bringing it back.
Yeah.
But like for me, I think that like I don't think game. I think there was a bit of an issue with balance. I think there was a bit of an issue with because they tried so hard to keep, like, for example, the stat lines looking exactly the same, but they added in the R stat, whatever that was. But they wanted like
resilience.
They wanted like the fight value and stuff to remain, which is, you know, fine. I think that they made a good game.
Yeah,
it just wasn't a good game for Lord of the Rings.
Fair. A good rule set, but not for what SPG. Well, sorry, not for what Lord of the Rings needed.
And I think it would have benefited from a second edition just to tighten up.
Yeah. I was just going to say.
So that's what I was hinting at with, like, should it have had more time? Like,
but I don't think that people were going to buy it. I think
no, maybe that's true.
I'm very glad that it's in the place it is now, to be honest. I think dead. Foreshadowing. In a year from now, we'll know.
SPG was always the better game. It had a clear idea from the very start of what it was going to be. It executed that very well.
And it's about heroes. Like, Lord of the Rings is about characters. It's not about giant armies. Tolkien describes vaguely what happens in battles, but doesn't go into detail about, you know, the flanking maneuvers of the Uruk-hai Third Legion or anything. Like
Battle of Five Armies, 3-hour film, and it's like 2 pages in the Hobbit.
Yeah, like
when Bilbo gets knocked out.
Yeah. You can't have as many like because heroes are leading units in this, and it's the whole unit that like rolls.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like, you know, Aragorn is fighting someone. Aragorn and his dudes are fighting someone. Whereas in
heroes
SPG,
I remember
that was bizarre.
Yeah, but that's like the only interaction where you're like, oh, you know, this one individual character is doing something, as opposed to SPG where literally it's just them like going ham all the time, and being a character.
Do you not remember that scene in Lord of the Rings where Aragorn and 48 warriors of Minas Tirith just suddenly disappeared and then reappeared behind the enemy?
Okay. Cool. So, what happened post Watra? This is in my head, I've written at the top of this slide, post Watra chaotic expansion into the Hobbit, and that's kind of that's what I associate with this period of time, because it didn't feel.
I agree.
It didn't feel super coherent. It didn't feel like there was much of a plan. It just felt like they filled a gap of a couple of years while the Hobbit was coming out and while they were trying to work out what the next thing was going to look like.
Well, I fell into the trap of buying There and Back Again, which was valid for about 2 months by the time I bought it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was like post Hobbit, wasn't it?
Mm.
But
I mean, it still became pointless.
Yeah. Beforehand, I think it was very clear that they realised War was dead. They must have been in like pre-production of The Hobbit. They knew that it was going to come out. So they were like, shit, let's go back to SPG. And they just released like 5 supplements, which were actually very good.
Yeah, I enjoyed them.
And they released the warband system, and that was like that was their patch without having to release a rule book.
Yeah.
Onto what was at this point fucking ancient one rule book. But still,
how old was it at that point? It was what?
When was it released? Was
2003, 2004, maybe?
Yeah, it was almost 10 years old by the time the game came out with the Hobbit.
That's crazy.
But yeah, then the Hobbit came out. Yay.
Yeah.
Did
the Hobbit not being very good have any impact, do you think? Or what impact do you think it had? Do you think
do you not
will have hurt? Do you think like it will have actively had a huge impact on sales?
Oh, so much. I distinctly remember going into the Games Workshop when the Hobbit came out. And GW had invested quite clearly a lot of money into plastic dwarfs and grimhammers that were in the movie for like a minute.
Yeah.
There was like a new the plastic box set released for the Hobbit, the starter set, came in a limited edition run, which included a free Radagast.
Wow.
They never sold through the starter set to a starter set that didn't have a limited edition Radagast included.
Wow.
Like, they were still selling the one that said like limited edition Radagasts while stocks last. Like,
but it was limited edition. Why didn't it sell out?
Well, maybe because no one liked Radagast.
Oh,
just gonna put it out there. But that was a good starter box. You got like, because if you think about they've repackaged it all now. You got that Plastic Thorians Company, which was fine. I actually don't think the model's good. I actually think that in a weird way, it wasn't a massive improvement on the Plastic Fellowship. I know that like there is better quality detail on it, but in terms of like posing and stuff like that, no. And it came with all those plastic goblins.
It did. So many plastic goblins.
And it came with that plastic Goblin Town scenery.
It did. What a time to be alive.
It made goblins very cheap.
It did. They what else did they release? They released plastic eagles, plastic fell wargs, plastic fucking fell warg riders, the plastic orc hunter dicks.
All the Hobbit stuff, basically.
Like they went like fully into plastic, and you can see that they thought it was going to be 2 movies. Plastic stuff for what ended up being the beginning of Desolation of Smaug, and then after they realized that no one was buying it, everything was fine crap.
Yeah,
and the change was quite drastic. And then, do you remember the Battle of Five Armies film? At that point, they didn't even bother making most of the miniatures. Like, no Iron Hills Dwarfs came out with the release of that. Smaug came out. Presumably because they'd just really wanted to make Smaug and they knew that they'd sell some for collectors.
Yeah.
But they didn't even bother finishing off. And that film was pretty dreadful. Yeah. But the rule set, lots of good ideas. Introduction of new heroics.
Yep.
Introduction of brutal power attacks. Monsters for the first time became usable. Beforehand, you just used to have like a 3 attack Ent, or like a 3 attack troll, and you just go, okay, I'll move 1 warrior into base contact with them.
Yeah,
you kill the warrior next turn. Oh, okay, I'll just move 1 warrior into base contact with them. Yeah, I think the idea that any hero could use any heroic was a bit of a mistake.
That did drastically affect the game.
Yeah, suddenly you're like Goblin Captain.
Yeah,
was a potential threat.
Fuck anything up.
The one thing I didn't like about this rule set, and I still am of, special sticks for weapons. Don't think you need that level of complexity in game, and I think that actually most people, unless they're like really trying to gain an edge, just don't even bother using them, to be honest. I don't think I've ever used the sword one. I think I'm just like, I can't be asked. I'll just hit as a sword.
Well, the thing is, if you have enough fight value, or if you are elves and you're 2-on-1ing someone, one of them will always faint because there's no reason not to.
Well,
they're-
maybe if you're a nerd, but
everyone uses these. You're just too lazy, I think.
I know, but that like, I don't think you need them in the game.
It's not needed. It adds a small level of complexity to what would otherwise be very straightforward. It's the same with shielding. Like, I think shielding is an excellent rule.
Shielding is different though. Shielding is like a much more. It's much easier to understand, to remember, just like a much bigger thing. It's like you are giving up your ability to hit, to defend, whilst like the little like stab rules, it's like, oh god, I have to like roll a dice and something happens to my fight, and then the bonus is like, what, you reroll ones, is it?
Yeah,
that's like an unnecessary layer to the game. Which
also, can I just remind you that you have converted all of your Hobbit models, a very uncompetitive list, to have axes.
Axes, because that's the only one that I can remember how it works.
Okay.
But to be fair, I've now decided that I'm just basically probably never ever going to do the special strike with the axes because I don't think it's actually worth it.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
I don't know what to say. I think that's correct. But
the next thing that was introduced in these, specifically in the different source books, or different expansion books, whatever you want to call them, was this idea of like different characters in different forms. So there were like 2 versions of Elrond, there were 2 versions of Éomer, like in the same book, but like some of them got more powered up and were more expensive. Was that a good idea, and should it come back or not?
I think it's just to represent them in different points in time.
Yeah. So like the Éomer one is like one where he's like maybe just heading to Helm's Deep or something like that, and the other one where he's like fully kitted out at the Pelennor.
I think it's good. It's good.
Okay. And like, should there be different stats for those different heroes, or should, like, I don't know, do they need different profiles?
They do still do this though, right? Like Eowyn, Dernhelm, or whatever she's called.
I mean,
was it
Saruman good and Saruman evil, I suppose, is the perfect example.
Aragorn King, Boromir Fellowship, Boromir the Cats and White. They just chose to cut out some of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
I don't mind it.
I was just wondering, and like, you know, I thought different versions of Elrond were quite interesting. There were some weird points values as well. Like, a lot of heroes couldn't take horses at this point. So like, Elrond had no option for being mounted. Gil-galad had no option for being mounted. The only way I think you could mount Aragorn was if he was in his ministerial form, maybe. I'm
assuming this was a Games Workshop, we only make rules for models we sell thing at the time.
Yeah.
Which is funny because in War of the Ring, there's a profile for a stone giant.
Yeah, no, War of the Ring was the opposite. We're gonna go
bunch of random shit,
and then they didn't.
Yeah,
I think the university best thing they did was the band system, and I think that when they then redid it so that heroes could have different sized warbands, that kind of perfected the system. I think it's a really elegant way to build armies and ensure that you can't spam too hard. I think that was just a really good move.
I agree.
Right. We're now in the present day, the game as we know it. So we've time traveled. So this was kind of where it all got collated together, and it all started to become, at least in my opinion, a bit more coherent. So you had the main rules manual, which was separate to the profiles. So you had Armies of Lord of the Rings and Armies of the Hobbit. There was also kind of off to the side, I think Battle Companies maybe came out in like 2017. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that.
They did 2 books within like a year.
Okay.
God knows why. And
Yeah.
one replaced the other. Like one is now.
But yeah, how do we feel about like you obviously got your separate rule book, which is different to, the One Ring book, and then you've got your different ones for the armies of Lord of the Rings and armies for the Hobbit.
I think it works well, and I think with the amount of profiles, this was the right move. I do feel like the armies of the Hobbit book being the same price as the Army of Lord of the Rings book is a bit of a bitter pill to swallow.
There are genuinely times I'll pick up the Armies of the Hobbit book and I'll get it confused for one of the expansion books. Like they're that comparable in terms of like their size. I do think it's ridiculous. The arms, obviously, maybe you pay for that power creep allegedly in the Armies of the Hobbit.
Pay to win.
But yeah.
I think that they correctly realised though that actually the nostalgia felt 2018 was a more powerful seller than the more recent films, The Hobbit, and that as long as they provided ways for people to actually buy the miniatures, which at this point a lot were out of production, and that they supported the game and gave it some attention, that it would do well. How ironic, slow head turn.
They changed heroics in this one as well, so everybody no longer had access to all the heroic actions. Based on what we said earlier, feels like that was a good decision. Maybe put more emphasis on actually the bigger heroes having more impact on the game, which is probably what we wanted.
Yeah, and I think it finally makes some heroes worth their money or points.
Yeah. I don't really know how much there is to say about all that. Like, I think it felt like a good move all round. Like, I think everybody won as a result of like the game coming together a bit more coherently.
And I think for a modern GW game, if you like, for example, if you're interested in all the, you buy 2 books and you don't need the expansion books, you're done. And I think that's quite an attractive proposal when other games it's like, you want to play Minas Tirith, buy the Minas Tirith book, you chump. And I think that was a good change away from how they'd originally done supplements, where they'd done like, I know the supplements were a lot smaller and a lot cheaper. Yeah. And it was like, here's because I think Scanning of the Chart at the time was probably like what, £12, maybe, something like that.
Maybe.
Wasn't like a
we'd have to check for inflation.
I feel like it was more than that, but yeah.
I remember that my Black Templars Codex was only £15 when I bought that. Anyway, I think it's quite a nice proposal, just saying like you get literally every rule for Lord of the Rings, bar like maybe 10 profiles that are in the expansions in one book.
Yeah.
And then the really hardcore people expansions,
Final thing, they changed rules on alliances with these, so like there were greater restrictions on alliances. Personally, I feel like that was a really good decision. Like it maybe made the game feel like it was a bit more in control, and like maybe they had more control over the balance of the game, because before it was, bit of the Wild West where kind of anything could go with anything.
Yes.
Good.
How do we feel about the state of MESBG compared to other games?
Broadly speaking, I would prefer the way that MESBG is handled to anything else GW produces. I think the one thing which I want, which I don't think is that controversial, is for games which will just be a bit more transparent about, hey,
what they're doing.
You're going to get a book in late 2024. Like, I don't mind the way, it's more just like,
the lying
confirmation that something is actually gonna happen.
I imagine they'll be very careful not to lie, in fairness to them. I imagine they will just creatively represent the truth, which is semantically different, I guess, but still feels a bit bad.
And I know that like obviously there's a
you cut out.
Oh, never mind. There's a lot of stuff that's obviously disrupting them as a company and disrupts a lot of companies with shipping, supplies, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I know that like Games Workshop is a company at the end of the day. It's driven by profit.
Yep.
Like with all companies, because of the capitalist society we live in, they have to try and make a bigger profit than the previous year.
Yep.
And hence that has led to them now, trying to release one of their major games every 3 years because they must. Because otherwise they won't be able to make the big spike in money they made when they released that box set of 40k that came with like 1 million Space Marines.
That sold out in about 35 seconds and
Exactly.
had people bot accounting to try and get more.
And so now they've realized that you need to do that basically every year to keep the money coming in. Mm-hmm. So I get why Middle-earth is not always the top of the priority. I think it's just like, if it's not the top of your priority, and like why can't you just say a bit more transparently there's going to be released, but it won't be until next year?
Because I mean, personally, I can only really speak from my own perspective here, but like the stuff that's happened with the diorama and all the releases recently, I don't really know what their objective is. Like they're not keeping people happy, because I think they're handling it quite badly, but they're just also. They're not admitting or like giving us an idea of what the roadmap would be, and that just seems like such an obvious thing to do in this situation. Just give us an idea of what it's going to look like, and then people, I guess maybe they don't want people to just give it up completely. They want people to hang on in the hope that something will happen.
Yeah, I think the sad thing is that it's leading to a bit of toxicity in the community.
Yes, it is.
It's because you've got the old grognards going, oh, well, don't you remember in like 2015 when we thought the game was going to die? Like, be grateful that you got one diorama this year. You've got the people who've started playing recently who probably got into wargaming, when there was like the big spike in like 2020. And they're a bit more like, why is 40k getting like 20 different flavors of Space Marine every month and nothing's been released except for this one diorama for a year? Who are a bit more perplexed. And then obviously you've got all of the shades in between of people who want releases, people who don't.
It is interesting.
Yeah, people who defend GW, which I always find to be an interesting perspective.
It's like, you don't need to defend them. They are a company at the end of the day.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Like,
I often think, if there was no more releases, ever, like the game just stays like this, would I be happy with that? And part of me thinks yes, because it's in a good state, people will still play it. But also, as we pointed out, we're all sort of just a bit done with like collecting armies. Like there's nothing that any of us feel compelled to collect anymore. And I think even if a new release were to come out, even if we weren't interested in buying it ourselves, it would give us some kind of new interest. You'd see the new army about. It would just create a bit of buzz around the game that we're not seeing at the moment. That would be my only point.
SPG is in a position and has a dedicated enough fan base that if Games Workshop stopped supporting it, it would be fine. Because there are games that Games Workshop has stopped supporting, which have more players now than when they stopped supporting them, because people have like kept it going, put PDFs online, and the community just keeps going. I think that obviously the new releases really help though with, as we're saying, that buzz.
Yeah,
like something has to generate that buzz, and the most straightforward way to do it.
Yep. Also, like, people are just a bit fickle. Like, I'm maybe speaking for myself here, but the one that's that's causing a buzz for me at the moment is Star Wars Legion, and I think part of the reason I'm getting excited about that is there's new stuff going on and there's reasons to be interested in the game, and I think SPG will always be there and it'll always be a really cool thing that exists, but people will, if nothing's changing with the game, people may go elsewhere and start to look for other options.
And that's okay.
That's fine.
Although there aren't really any other Lord of the Rings options, are there?
No, but I was more just thinking about things other than Lord of the Rings, because I don't know if I'd want to play a different Lord of the Rings game, to be honest. Like,
no, we've committed too hard to.
I would.
If it was like
if it was
in
like
the case of Shatterpoint, where you just have to buy,
I think
it's a few minis.
If they did a Shatterpoint style game, I think it would be good. I think it cut out the fucking chaff and just did all.
Yeah,
you enjoy that.
Yeah, but would there be the motivation for them to do that?
No, I mean Games Workshop are never going to do it.
Because,
it would go against their ethos of,
more money,
releasing stuff for an existing system if possible.
Mm-hmm.
If they lost the license, though, I think that's the route that whoever bought it would take. I don't think that you can invest into an army-sized game for property, which the films came out that long ago. I think that the only thing they'd be able to feasibly do is heroes, because then people buy them for the painting, for the, they like the heroes and stuff. I don't know, but there's new stuff on the horizon. There's the weird animated War of Rohirrim film coming at some point, supposedly. There's supposedly a new trilogy. God knows what it's going to be about. Fucking Gollum when he lived in his cave.
The Gollum game. That's what it was all about. It's the deep lore.
Oh, please. A 10-hour trilogy focusing on Gollum's fucking story. Yeah. There's obviously Rings of Power.
Which could still come good. I don't think it will, but it could still come good.
There's still no.
We want it to come good, though. That's the thing.
I want it to come good. I would really like it to be decent.
There's still no merchandise for it, though, so I think it lives in some sort of hellhole where you're not allowed.
But Amazon just going to keep the rights, you reckon?
Yeah.
To do everything and just not do anything with it.
Well, I mean, they've spent a fucking billion on it. They need to get some revenue back. Like, how on earth they're going to do it, I've got no idea. But
Amazon only own the rights for the appendices, so it's not really like if they choose not to do anything with it, people are going to care. Like, oh no, we film about what Gimli does after fucking Lord of the Rings.
He goes to the glittering caverns.
Oh, it's devastating news.
Glittering caves.
Yeah. Oh no, we're not going to see that film.
Cool. I feel like we've nearly reached the logical end, to be honest. I was going to talk about the expansion books, but I'm not sure there's much point now.
We've talked about them in previous videos. Go watch them.
Yeah. Not much else to say on that one, really. Overall, though, I think SBG is doing fine. I think it's at its best when there is a clear idea of what the direction of the game is. And I think it had a really clear direction at the start. I think it had a really clear direction when they re-released it in 2018.
Yeah.
And to be honest, since then, it's kind of just been a bit unclear. So
all it is one expansion book a year. And for them just to slowly trickle the models out like Defense of the North to keep the hype sustained. That's it.
Yeah.
Everyone would be happy that way. The people who complain about the releases being too frequent, it wouldn't be too frequent. The people who complain about there not being anything would get something. The people who enjoy hype for the sake of hype would have some hype. And the people who want new miniatures can buy them. There you go.
Easy.
Can't be that difficult.
Games Workshop, if you end up doing that, please, I don't know, what would they give us for that idea?
I would like a packet of Hobnob chocolate biscuits.
Right, okay. I mean, we could aim slightly higher, or are we staying humble?
I thought that was pretty high.
Okay.
I went for Hobnobs. Come on now.
Yeah, are they branded Hobnobs? They're not Tesco own brand.
Yeah, fuck Tesco own brand.
They're not called Hobnobs then, are they? They're called oat biscuits.
They're called Hobby Dobbies.
They're called Knob Hobs.
referring to people buying them.
Legally distinct Hobnobs.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about news?
I think that's probably a good idea, isn't it?
There's no Middle-earth news.
We should have like a counter since the last news.
I don't think so. Very briefly, there was some Warhammer Day preview news stuff.
Exciting.
Mayor, talk about Kill Team in less than 1.5 minutes.
They released a new set of Scorpions versus Scouts. They took all the old Scouts off the shelf, and this is the reason. Well, one of the reasons. New Scouts, Scorpions for some reason, probably because they don't sell enough boxes of those. I doubt very many people will buy it. It's not that interesting. That's it.
I think lots of people buy it because Space Marines and Eldar, but they won't buy it for Kill Team.
Well, no, I mean the Scorpions aren't, anything new. I don't think, are they?
They're plastic now, and that's enough reason for
Brilliant.
to buy them.
I think anyone who's ever wanted Scorpions will have already bought them.
And I think that they will all buy them because I think that that's how it works.
Cool.
I think this will sell out very quickly. That's my prediction.
I mean, most of the Kill Team stuff does because of Scalpers.
Yeah.
But...
There you go. Yes, there was also Tall Boy.
Long Boy.
Long Boy. Insert the weird Japanese advert. Long.
どうしたの？
トールさんが避ける組咲いてる時の顔が好き。
そう？
もっと長く見てたいな。
Long,
It's so needlessly long.
I'm not allowed to talk about him.
Oh.
He's so good. I love him.
Yeah.
I might buy one.
Give it to Mare.
I might buy one, chop him off at the waist, and then put like a Black Templar on top.
Just a Black Templar on stilts.
Have him as my HQ choice, maybe. That'd be good. Maybe I should recreate the diorama that you got me, but with a really long sword. The orc's on the ground, and he's stabbing him from really high up. He is a really tall boy.
Yep, and very long.
I don't know if either of you watch Ben and Tom's Warhammer weekly thing they do on the Ogscast Twitch. They were suggesting, they were suggesting that you should, those little like telescopic antenna that you get on like radios.
Yeah.
They were suggesting using 2 of those so that you could make retractable legs. Great idea.
Oh, that's actually a brilliant idea.
Oh my god. And then you could just pop him up for line of sight. Fucking 12-inch tall building, no problem, mate. Whoop. And then in your opponent's shooting phase, you just retract him back down. It was
majestic.
Yeah, he's tall. And then finally, the Britannia releases for the old world looks pretty good. It's a bit weird that they're like new plastic stuff, but then also old plastic stuff. So you have a horse that looks like a fucking dog, but next door is like the brand new horse that looks like a horse.
Oh, that was good.
That was
well articulated.
Withering analysis.
Analysis.
It looks fine. I do feel like they've fallen for the classic GW trap of too much detail.
Fucking hate. I was looking at some Shatterpoint miniatures today in the store. I saw some artwork on a box with the fucking Fire Slayer dwarves or whatever they're called, and I thought, oh, this could be cool. Maybe after I've painted my pile of shame, I'll have a look at these. Turned it over, looked at the detail, put it back on the shelf. Like, it's just too much.
Okay, go look at the Knights of the Realm foot.
Sure, I want to.
You want to, bearing in mind that this is Warhammer Fantasy, so your units are going to be like minimum of 10. But
what
are
you saying that there's
Knights of the Realm foot?
On foot. Sorry. Hang on, I'll send you a link.
No, I'm googling it.
I've sent you a link.
I'm ignoring it.
Is it on the group? Because
Yeah,
Holy moly!
it's on the group. Right. This is like a
Fucking
troop.
hell.
This is like a troop's choice. Imagine having to
Christ.
paint like a unit of 20 of them. And the thing is like everyone is like, oh, I really like these. They're so much more detailed than the old Bretonia. And you're like, yes, but bearing in mind that because it's Bretonia, you're going to have to paint already like a ridiculously detailed shield and all of the like tabards and shit. Like they're all going to have like heraldry on. And then you've added on the enormous quantity of detail. Oh, it would be dreadful to paint. Like painting one of these sounds good. Painting unit of 10. Oh my
That's good.
god! Like, am I gonna only need 10? No. Buy another 10 because they're probably only going to be competitive in units of 20. Ugh.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah,
I mean,
so that,
there's some nice, like, I'm sure there's some alternative miniatures you could get if you didn't want to use those, but I mean, fuck.
oh, for sure. And like, obviously, like the heroes are cool. Like the new handmaiden looks pretty cool. She's got a bit of a Leia using force pose.
Right.
She's using the force to prevent herself dying in the cold grips of
Vacuum
space.
face.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that scene.
So that's the pose that she's doing, and I
Mm.
encourage people to convert this model into Leia. Yeah, but you know, it's just classic GW. Just stick a gazillion details on.
Call it a
And
good job.
And I don't know if I'm about that life.
Right. Cool.
And that was all the news that we could be bothered to talk about. There was probably also some new Space Marines that we missed.
But we don't talk about that.
Scouts.
There was probably more though. They were blue.
I mean, aren't they always?
Unless they weren't.
Well, yeah, you can paint them whatever color you want, but Games Workshop would have painted the blue. Yes. Good. I suppose that rounds out this month's podcast.
Does.
That was much longer than I thought it was going to
Thank
be.
the Lord.
That was insane.
We did it.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah. Should we say goodbye? Or should we just end it?
Let's just end it.
Okay, good.
I'm glad I'm not editing this one.
Sorry, I'm just gonna cut out all the bit between hobby and news. That'll make it nice and simple, won't it?
Hobby news.
Right, now we're going to talk about the history of Middle-earth Strike game news. Hooray! Oh, right. Are we gonna end Craig?
Yeah.
Are we actually not doing an outro then?
Oh,
yeah,
I mean, we
Do you want to make one just in case you want to use it?
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Peace among worlds.
There we go. Iconic.
That's brilliant. Fuck
Yeet.
me.